Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have back with us a very special guest, Bishop Kevin Foreman. We had a great conversation back in September, and we talked a lot about transformation, incredible health journey, choices, and all sorts of things. And, Kevin, I felt like we just barely scratched the surface, so I'm really glad you were able to make some time to join us again. How you been?
Oh, listen, been amazing and glad to be with you today. I tell you what, it's always great when conversations go well and you're able to have follow up and what have you. And so, again, as I said before, thanks for having me. Big salute to you for what you do and the conversations you're having. I think conversations are catalysts for change, and so I appreciate you for doing that. And I agree, we just scratched the surface. We had so much we could have got into.
It's really amazing this podcast. You talked the last time about your divine download where you were, looking for answers, and all of a sudden a Netflix movie comes up and you're
Right.
watching it, and it was like just perfectly tailored for you. And then you tried to go and find it again, and it wasn't there.
Yep.
And I've met a number of people who've had sort of similar experiences where they were searching and asking God for, give me an answer. And all of a sudden it's like a special channel comes on just for them.
Yep.
And then they go back and try to go share it with somebody, and who knows where it is. And
Yep.
amazing how God works. I've had personal experiences where God spoke to me, in a language that's like, it's words, but it's not words.
Right.
It's in your heart, it's in your spirit. And you know, it's so powerful when you reach out and connect to the divine source, which is God, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and you make that connection. Like, you can't let go of that. You can't ever go back to, I don't understand, I don't know, I don't feel, I don't trust, I don't
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're stuck in a place where you're like, yeah, I'm connected, and I got
Yeah.
a purpose, and I better step up and do my job.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's a phrase that says he's got a miracles, signs, and wonders. And so I think the signs are the most important thing. That, a sign is to point you in a direction. It's
Right.
not the answer, it's to point you to an answer. It's not the destination, it's to point you to a destination. It's not where you're going, it's to get you where you're going. And so when you view it that way, it's sort of like how you mentioned, went back, couldn't find it, and others will go back and they're trying to share it and they can't share it, or they're trying to communicate to someone what happened and they can't quite articulate it well. It's kind of like driving.
Right.
Once
Yeah.
I've gone past that sign, there's no need for me to go back past that sign. I've gone
Right.
past that sign. And so I think for many times in life, the reason you can't duplicate it is because the sign did what it was supposed to do. It got you past it.
I totally agree. I think sometimes we get stuck in a piece of a process, and we keep looping back trying to, because it was powerful, or it was beautiful, or it was something special about it. And so we want to go back and relive it, recreate it, watch that rerun, feel it again.
Yep.
But that's not how journeys are, like you're saying, you keep going. And
Yep.
we're born, we live, we die. And
Yep.
and that's a beautiful journey. And
Yep.
after we die, we have an eternity of ongoing journey. And
Yeah.
I think that getting stuck is where so many of the problems happen. And last time we talked about this amazing weight loss transformation that you
Yeah.
had, and we both shared some of that, but yours was a lot more pronounced than mine was. And you talked about transformation, and uh, you used the butterfly
Yeah, yeah,
imagery.
evolution.
And
Hmm.
what's interesting, since that time, my wife and I have a nonprofit called Gardens of Hope, and we use our botanical garden to help people find healing and mental, physical, spiritual healing. And just very recently, we met a woman who's teaching us how to grow a butterfly garden. And
Mm.
most
Ah,
literally, I'm looking across the way at a table of a butterfly that just came out of a chrysalis, and we've been
wow.
watching it grow in this little thing, and you get a caterpillar and you give it what it
Yep.
needs to eat, and next thing you know, it's hanging up in the top and it makes this little cocoon. And then sometime later, weeks or months even, all of a sudden this amazing creature comes out of this thing. And
Wow.
so much like us,
Yep.
we go through these struggles, we go through these journeys, and you get hit with this difficulty. And if you do it right, you go to God and say, "Hey, I need your help." And
Yep.
somehow, some way, you get this direction or this inspiration, and you do this thing, whatever it is. Everybody's got their thing, and if you do it right, you come out as this transformed individual. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on all that?
Yeah. But I think one, for you to be able to see it, I think is awesome, because talking about it is one thing. Seeing it in nature is another thing. Seeing it up close and personal, I think gives it a totally different view, totally different experience, totally different understanding, because you get to see in real time this process isn't just a theory, it's that process. And you get to see that journey. And I think sometimes the challenge as humans that we can have is because we're in the journey, we don't always see our journey. So sometimes one of the best things to do is to step back, just like you're able to watch this,
Yeah,
step back, watch your own journey, watch your own life, celebrate your progress, celebrate where you've come to, but then also celebrate the fact that there's still more ahead of you. Like, this isn't the end. If you got a pulse, there's still a plan, there's more to do. There's more life ahead of you. And what I also love about it is, as humans, we're in a constant evolution, where you're going to go back through that same cycle in a different area of life. You may go back through that same cycle in the same area of life, just bigger. And I think recognizing that, it helps take away some of the feelings of frustration or anger or depression or anxiety or worry, some of those negative emotions that don't really serve us. You're able to overcome those negative emotions when you recognize this is normal. This is part of my journey. I've done this before. I'm doing this again, but I'm doing it at a higher level, at a bigger level, whatever that might be.
I love it. I love it. It's incredible how wherever you are, there's this amazing experience that you can have. You can learn so much, and then you don't even see what's in front of you. You don't see how high you can go or how far
Yep.
you can go. And
Yep.
each time you make a step, like you last time you talked about, sometimes you get up on a peak and you have a celebration, but you don't necessarily remember or realize that there's going to be a valley in front of you if you keep walking.
Yep. Yep.
And that's it's an important it's an important lesson because it's good to celebrate. It's good to feel good about
Yep.
accomplishing and looking back on, hey, wow, look where we come. I can
Right.
imagine if you take a moment and look back on your life and all the accomplishments that you've had, man, you could have a good long party about it all, but it doesn't seem to me you spend a whole lot of time there.
No, you're right about it. You know what? Now, I will be honest. One of the areas that and I don't live with regret, but I do live with a healthy sense of what would you do different? And I think that's a very important distinction, because I think regret leads to negative places and spaces mentally. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. You did the best you could based on the information you had. One of the things I would do different is exactly what you just said. It's in my celebration, celebrating the fact. A friend of mine was just visiting with me, and he said, you don't often talk about all of what you've done, what you have, what you built, what you've accomplished. You don't talk about that. And I said, that's a good point. I said, that's because I've just moved on to get it to doing more. I've just moved on to accomplishing more. I've just moved on to impacting more lives or whatever it might be. And so I can admit, one of the areas that I do need to do, let me say it this way, that I'm constantly learning to do a better job of, is in those celebrations, because I think I've done a pretty good job of learning how to pivot and move on to the next thing to conquer. And so, to your point, right, I don't stay there too long. I'm typically, "Ooh, that was great. Okay, now we got to go do this." And what I should do, and what I am learning to do better, is, okay, great. Let's sit in this for a half a day. Let's
Yeah.
enjoy this. Now
Yeah.
let's move on, because ultimately life is a collection of experiences. That's it. It's a collection of memories. The reality is none of it we can take with us when we exit this earth in terms of material things. You can't take people with you when you exit the earth. What you
Right.
can take is the impact that you left while you were in the earth. And so I think at the end of the day, for me, I'm learning to constantly celebrate more. But I think I won't say perfected, because I'm always a student. I'm always striving to get better. But I think I've pretty well figured out how to pivot and move on to the next thing. And I think sometimes it's the inverse for most people. They sit in a celebration for years, but they haven't pivoted and moved on to the next thing. I think a great example of that you could look at, if we were to use a business example, would be Blockbuster. You remember Blockbuster?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Blockbuster,
I'm
I
a
think,
little
is
older than you, so yeah, I definitely remember.
yeah, you remember that.
It came out,
So,
yeah.
so Blockbuster, the story goes, of course, Netflix, the juggernaut that it is today. The story goes that at one point, Blockbuster had an opportunity to buy Netflix, and I think it was like 40 million bucks. And Blockbuster had been the juggernaut, and they were sitting on the success, and they were Blockbuster. What is anybody else ever going to do to us?
Right.
And today, there is one left. I believe it's in Alaska. There's
There you
one
go.
Blockbuster left. And Netflix is, this juggernaut, this multi-billion-dollar multinational
Yeah,
operation.
they're just getting ready to take over some major studios right now.
Exactly. Like a $80 million, or excuse me, $1 billion bid, and for Warner Discovery. But the point is this, is that Blockbuster spent too much time celebrating, so they
Right.
couldn't pivot. And I think that's a lesson for everybody. Who do you want to be, Blockbuster or Netflix?
100%. I agree. I'd like to take a second and, we didn't talk about a lot of your accomplishments or even if you don't want to call it that, is the places that you've explored and the ways that you've touched people. And one of them is music.
Yeah.
And we don't think we even mentioned music on the last conversation, but it's been a big old part of your journey, your experience, and what you've shared with people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? I think music is one of the ways that um, God really touches us. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
need words necessarily, just the sound and those notes are just so powerful. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your
Yeah, so I got, so from the last episode we did, the joke is I came out of my mom's room with a Bible and a briefcase. So I had this affinity towards business and spirituality.
Mhm.
And those two things always worked in tandem for me. And it's a biblical principle. Some people see those as separate. They're not. And biblically speaking, there's a scripture, Revelation 5:10, that says God makes us kings and priests, spiritual and successful in one person. And we see this concept from this guy named Melchizedek. But the point is this, is that's just, I always had this affinity. But with that, I also had this love for music. And interestingly enough, I tried several different instruments and didn't like them at all. Trombone, hated it. My stepfather played it. That's why I tried it. Hated it. Tried trumpet, hated it. Tried the alto sax, loved it, because at that time I think Clinton was president and he played sax.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, I remember Clinton playing sax on like the Jay Leno show or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, it's because I was a kid when he was president. But nonetheless, I remembered that. And so as a result of that, I ended up, thinking that I liked that. I was playing alto sax. I'm like, you know what? I don't really like this. And so I eventually got a drum set, because a friend of mine, he and I were very competitive, and he was an actual musician. He could play, and he got a drum set. So I went home and said, I want a drum set. They said, well, you can't even play drums. I said, but I'm going to learn. They said, just like all the other instruments? I said, no, but this is different. And it was different.
Oh,
I got that drum set. I learned how to play, taught myself how to play. And from there, I taught myself how to play keys and what have you. And I was eventually inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame. And so,
pretty big leap there. You go from
yep.
taught myself a few things and whoop, there I go, right?
Yeah, to the Hall of Fame, which I didn't even know we had one until I had the pleasure of being inducted into it. And for music, and I wrote all of our songs that we've released that folks can get at bishopforeman.com. Amazing music, too. It's really inspirational. My favorite of all the songs I've written is this song called already won, WON. And it talks about how every battle we face, it's ultimately already won. We're walking out the journey, but the battle has already been won. I wrote that song, and all of our music has done amazingly well, and it's been received so well. And it was a great accomplishment, and it's one of those things where, and I'll be honest, I haven't touched songwriting in the last couple of years as we've been in this transitional period, moving our headquarters from Denver to Atlanta. But it is one of those things that it's on my, I always have a list. I say a list of things that are pending, and it's on my list because I've gotten some things. Because what I'll literally do during a service, I'll just write a song on the stage. So actually, let me correct that statement. While I have not sat in a studio and wrote songs, every Sunday I'm writing a song. Like literally, I'll just randomly make something up on the stage, mic in hand, whatever the flow is with the musicians. We'll literally write songs right there on the spot. So let me correct that because that's not accurate. But again, that kind of shows you my mindset. I'm so fast moving on to the next thing. I didn't even didn't even recognize that that's how I was doing that. But nonetheless, love it. I think music is universal. It speaks to everybody, speaks to anybody, regardless of your race, regardless of your background, regardless of even your musical preferences. There are some songs that just the lyrics of it, just the flow of it, the chords that are used can invoke a level of connectivity, a level of emotion, a level of depth that does something that often maybe conversation couldn't do. Maybe even a presentation couldn't do, but music has the ability to do it.
Yeah, music can touch you in a way that I don't know that anything else can. I had a guest that had a major mental disorder, and she was talking about how music was the tool that she was able to start to find her way out of it. And, it's really powerful. I'd like to hear a little bit about your ministry as well.
Sure.
Obviously, that's a big part of who you are and what you do, probably the biggest part, I would imagine. And you're talking about, moving and shaking and changing. And why don't you tell us a little bit about where you come from and where you are and where you're going with it?
Got it. Yeah. So, you're right. Number one, the ministry is a huge part. It dominates my time. But I love it. I mean, the impact that we've had in the lives of people is fantastic. We measure it. We have something we call Harvest at a Glance, and we're actually getting ready to change the name at the top of the year to History Makers. Church, which just reflects the next level, the next phase of what we're doing. But in that, the ministry, it's multicultural, multi-generational. We reach a lot of what we call unchurched or de-churched people. So for those unfamiliar with those terms, unchurched just means somebody never grew up in church.
Right.
De-church just means somebody that grew up in church, but for whatever reason, disconnected, fell away. So we reach a lot of people in those two categories. And so hence the term, the people's bishop, because I connect with people right where they're at, regardless of where they're at, to get them closer, to go further, faster in their relationship with God. And so that's really the premise of what we do. So out of the ministry, so many amazing things that have happened. We just crossed the 12,500 mark of people who have made decisions of faith and become Christians. This year alone, we're knocking at the door of 1,800 just this year. And we've given almost $1 million in missions, domestic and abroad. Almost 28,000 toys we've given away. After this Christmas season, it'll exceed the 28,000 mark. We've adopted thousands of families. We've given away, over £250,000 of food. At one point, we ran Aurora, the suburb of Denver, their largest food bank. We ran that largest location. So we're all about changing lives. We have a Bible college where people can earn associate's through doctoral level degrees. We have the leadership network that pours into leaders, not just church leaders, but business leaders, any seven of the seven spheres of society: arts and entertainment, business, education, government, media, church, and family. So, it keeps me, I won't say busy, because to me, busy is like being on a treadmill. I got to tell you something. Yesterday, it was the first day. I typically don't like doing in-gym cardio. I don't like it at all. So the last time I've done in-gym cardio, like an elliptical or treadmill, I don't like it because mentally, I don't like the concept of putting out the energy, but I didn't go anywhere. I don't like the construct in my mind. But in Atlanta, it's been so cold that it was in the low 40s yesterday. And so I did my first in-gym cardio yesterday. And so I was reminded, like, this isn't bad, but I was reminded of why I don't like it. I said, because this is, it associates, to me, it connects to busy, where you're in one place, you're doing, you're putting out energy, but you're not going anywhere. So I don't like to say busy, but it keeps me very productive. Every day is a journey. Every day it's you're connecting with people all across America, around the world, because we're a hyper church, not just in buildings, but online. And the majority of people connected to us have actually never stepped foot in a building. Our database is well over 16,000 people who are connected, and the majority of them have never stepped in a building.
And I think that's important. People connect the idea of church to some sort of a structure. And that wasn't what Jesus was talking about at all. He was talking about his family, his body
Yeah,
of
the body.
people, and that's it. So whether you're in a building or in a garden or talking online or communicating however you are, that's the power of the church right there.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And to see that, I got to be honest, that was one of those evolutions for me, because I was a very big believer, and in many ways still am to some extent, in the power of gathering physically.
Sure.
And so almost to the point to where when we started, we got into technology pretty early with streaming and apps and all that. And so for us, it became a thing where we were like, okay, we got to do this, and we're going to do this pretty early. We're going to do this pretty avant-garde at the time, when streaming used to cost, $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month. Of course, now most of us, it's very cheap. Depending on how you do it, you can even do it free.
Right.
But that was then. So we were doing that, but I still believed in the power of people being in the building. And then the pandemic hits. And because of our nature, we just kept flowing. In fact, we grew at an amazing rate during that time. But
I can
it also,
imagine, actually, people were kind of stuck in a place, and they
yeah,
were looking for a connection. They were looking for a way to find some fulfillment in a time when there wasn't a lot of that to be had.
right. Oh, exactly. And, you saw instantly the power of a phone, the power of an internet connection, the power of a video. You saw that instantly. And I think what that really did was it showed me another way. So then even when we opened the doors back up during the pandemic, we noticed some, easing. Denver was, of course, we were in Denver primarily at the time. And Denver, we noticed that it was our number one streaming audience. And so in seeing this, we were able to say, okay, we're seeing this amazing streaming audience. We're seeing these amazing numbers of people's lives being impacted. And for us, it really began, this evolutionary process of saying, we're a hyper church, which many in practice are. But I look at it in almost like two different business models. Walmart is a brick and mortar with a website.
Right.
Amazon is an online business with regional distribution. And, the second, and whether people like Walmart or Amazon, it's not the point, it's just the model that I'm going to. The second is the power. I mean, listen, people are going to be listening to this podcast across America, around the world, who they've never met you in person, never met me in person, but their lives are being impacted. And so I think there's a lot, there was so much to learn and to gain from that, and seeing that. Because I used to have a very traditionalist view that you got to get in the building, and there's value to that. But at the same time, there is the experience that people are able to have right there in the living rooms, right there online, right there watching, that we see it because it's just as powerful as people who step foot in the building.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters. And for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you. I agree. And I'd like to touch on this because, as you broadcast and you're reaching this broad audience of many people that you'll never meet, or maybe you will, maybe you won't, but you're gonna touch people
Right.
that you're not aware of.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and it seems to me that, you've gotten that as an important element of your ministry because
Yes.
that's what Jesus did. He walked from place to place and talked to everybody that came around, and his whole point was to touch all the people he could while he was
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And and you're walking in a similar way, except for you got technology now in a way that
Yeah.
wasn't around a couple thousand years ago. And
Right.
yet I get the sense, based on what I've read about you and what I've heard, is that you have a very personal and intimate relationship with anybody who comes near you, and
Yeah.
you're not hard to reach, and you're not somebody needs to tug your ear a little bit. It seems that you always have that to offer. I suspect that there's been some amazing interactions and interventions and things that you've experienced. I like it if you could share at least one of those with our audience about
Yeah.
somebody who you didn't see it coming, and somehow there was a giant impact.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So many because, um, and I don't say this just out of cliche or just certainly not out of self-aggrandizement, but literally every day we read the testimonies, we read the praise reports of lives that are impacted. I'll tell you one story that often it's a similar theme that happens because everybody goes through trauma, drama, in life in different ways. People handle it in different ways. And to your point, I strive to be the kind of person, despite how full my schedule is, despite how full life is, to make sure that, to me, you can never be too busy for people. Because if you're too busy for people, like this is the business of people.
Right.
And so, why have a platform if you're not going to connect with people? Sometimes people will send messages, and it takes me a little bit to get back to it. On Instagram alone, I get 200-300 messages, often close to 400-500 messages a day. So it takes me a while to get back. And I see people's responses. I'm shocked you responded. I'm shocked you even got the message. And I listen to that, and I think, well, that's the difference. You're dealing with the people's bishop. I want to connect. But the
Right.
thing that often comes to mind our thoughts when people are in deep places of despair. And sometimes that despair can turn into thoughts of self-harm, not just ideations, but actions. And one of the stories that actually stands out to me the most, this is years ago, there was one of our staffers, and she she was going through some things internally in her mind and what have you. And those things really began to weigh down on her, and so one day, I they'd been gone from the campus for a while, and I got this urge to just go to the campus. It was the weirdest thing because I generally, just wouldn't go, and if I would go, I would typically have a staff or someone with me, and so I went, and I happened to see her car back there. And I was like, "What are you doing here?" And and so there's a conversation, and oh, I'm good, sir. Everything is fine. Everything's good. Everything's great. And I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was a weird thing. And this just goes to show you the power of what we started this conversation with, of signs.
Mhm.
And so I didn't think anything else of it. I just thought, okay, well, maybe there's a reason. I said, there's a reason I came here. I don't know what that reason is, but there's a reason I'm here because I got from my home, drove all the way over here by myself, and I have no clue why I'm here. I have no reason to be in this building. It wasn't until a couple of years later when I was listening to a testimony video of hers that we found out that evening she had just written her goodbye letter to her family and her daughter. And that night she was planning to take her life.
Whoa.
She was planning to, close to the campus, there was like the light rail type of a state stop. She was planning, according to her, she was planning to jump in front of that, and that was going to be the end of her life. And she prayed and said, God, I don't, essentially, she didn't think her life was worth living anymore. And that unless she got a sign that was going to be her last night on the earth. I had no clue of that.
Wow.
And after she prays that, who pulls up? I pull up. And I didn't know that. And I think that's the powerful thing. Now, that theme, I see that happen all the time. I have people who say, I was just going through the day and I was watching your video. I get approached by people all the time, everywhere. I was in the gym one day. Guy walks over to me and, he walks over, he turns his phone towards me and he shows me a video of me. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And he says, oh my God. He says, listen, I just moved here from, I believe it was Illinois. I just moved here to here, meaning Atlanta, from Illinois. He says, he maybe was in his 60s, 70s, something like that. He said, you have no clue how every day I literally can't wait to see the video you release, to see what you have. He then shows me his phone and begins showing me all the videos that I saved. And he said, I was going through a rough, I believe it was a situation with his career, with his job. And similar story. He said, I was just over it. I was done. I just thought life was over. He said, but I started listening to your videos. I started connecting with you, following you. Again, a gentleman I had never, ever seen before and met before. That happens all the time. One lady, again, at the gym. A lot of this happens at the gym because I spend the most time in one place.
There you go.
Outside of environments, the office or what have you. But and a lady almost falls off the treadmill and says, "You're the TikTok guy." And I said that. She says, "Oh my God." She says, "You literally have no clue how what you do." She said, I wait on pins and needles, just waiting to see what you're going to release. It's the thing of lives where you don't know who needed the small thing you said that felt like, okay, I can keep living. I can keep going.
Yeah.
Those stories literally happen every day. And I'm not desensitized to them, but every single day, there's at least 5 to 10 of those stories every single day.
I love that. Well, you're clearly living the life that you're intended to, and I'm grateful for that. Is there a single thought that you'd like to leave our listeners with today? I know, like always, I suspect, and I hope to have you back again. We've got.
Oh, I'd love to. We're connected. You got me.
Whole show and scratched a little bit more, but so much more to talk about. But is there a thought that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I think what I would say is this. A lot of what we talked about today, we started the conversation with signs. And I think for every person listening, God's given you signs and they're all around you. And I think one of the best things to pray is a simple prayer. God, let me see the signs. The signs are pointing me in the right direction. They're pointing me to the right people, right places, right things, right ideas. Let me recognize the signs. Let me not only recognize the signs, but then let me respond to the signs. Let me take the action the sign is saying to take. And I think my life is full of that, where I've seen the signs and I've responded. And I'll be honest, I've not always responded quickly. I've not always responded accurately. But what I strive to do is to respond. And I say to everybody, look around you, respond, because heaven is speaking. We just have to respond.
I love that. That's beautiful. And Kevin, it's been an absolute treat to share some more time with you. I hope to do it again soon. And of course, how does anybody get a hold of you? I know there's people waiting on their fingers, pins, and needles. Like, how the heck do I get a hold of this guy?
Yeah, just bishopforeman.com. That's the website that'll get you connected. And then on all social platforms at Bishop Foreman. And if you're listening to this, I'd love to know that something spoke life into you. So please shoot me a message. You'll get a response. It might not be for a couple of days, but you will get a response from me. Let me know that it encouraged you, spoke life to you, built you up in some way, edified you. But bishopforeman.com or on social at Bishop Foreman for all the social platforms. If you go to TikTok, make sure you look for the blue check. On all my platforms, look for the blue check. There's like 100 fake profiles of me on TikTok. So I always like to say that to people because we get messages from people saying, "Is this other one you?" And I almost sometimes it's comical. I'm like, well, if you have to ask me if that's me, I think that tells you that it's not me. But I just like people to know that because sometimes people just search it, and sometimes I may not be the one that comes up for first. Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. And just again, grateful that you were able to take some time with us today. And
it's my pleasure.
For all the listeners, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of you who are making this show possible, and we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right, well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.